What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma. It feels like it's been a while since I've done a top 10 Borderlands video, but today I'd like to talk about what I think are some of the best, or perhaps more accurately, some of the coolest modded guns and weapons for Borderlands 1 Remastered. Now, before we start, and I guess it really should go without saying, but none of the items I'm about to show here can actually drop in-game, and for a hint on how to obtain them, you'll need to import an edited save from the original version of Borderlands 1 into the remastered version. I'll include the part codes in video so you can copy them and construct many of these using WillowTree, but I'll also mention that I got most of these from the Borderlands modding wiki. So if you see some things here that really interest you, you can definitely find some more stuff there. Even if you're not really interested in modded weapons, you may find this video as interesting because we'll be showcasing hidden gear rarities, cut weapon types, as well as some modded items that are just really powerful. So if you found you learned something from this video, definitely be sure to smash the like button as it really helps out the channel. Otherwise, guys, and without further ado, let's go ahead here and start with number 10, which is going to be this gold Aries Cyclops. As you may have guessed from the item card, this Aries revolver possesses a higher rarity color than pearlescent in Borderlands 1, and for the sake of comparison, this rarity appears to match the same rarity as regular in-game currency, or I guess money does. Meaning that quote-unquote gold rarity, which is a rarity that can also be found in Borderlands 2, also appears in Borderlands 1, as well as the remaster. However, unlike Borderlands 2, where this rarity is actually a lower tier than pearlescent, it ends up being a higher tier rarity in Borderlands 1, which is kind of interesting. My guess is that the way this was constructed has to do with the combination of specific weapon parts. Because this Aries Cyclops isn't really that much different from the standard pearlescent Aries. However, the main difference is that the code for this includes the legendary Cyclops sniper rifle title, which I guess ends up upgrading this pearlescent to that higher rarity tier. Regardless of how this works, it's clear that it does, and at the very least, it's nice to know there are a few hidden rarities in Borderlands 1. Speaking of hidden rarities, that should bring us to entry number 9, and that's going to be this red Rarity Jackal. While this Jackal is actually a bit weaker than a regular Jackal that can drop in-game, this Jackal has the advantage of being red rarity. Interestingly, this rarity is a tier above pearlescent if you observe all of your weapons in your inventory, however it's below the gold Aries Cyclops we just discussed earlier. Plus, and as one might expect, this red rarity is virtually identical to the rarity of health items in Borderlands 1 Remastered, so that's kinda cool. As for how this was created or constructed, I'm sort of at a loss, just like I was when talking about the Aries Cyclops. However, it does appear that pearlescent rarity gear in general seems to allow the possibility of additional rarities. Compared to a regular Jackal, you'll notice that this red rarity version lacks a magazine and also possesses an explosive elemental accessory, which when combined with an additional Jackal title may contribute to the Jackal's appearance. Ultimately, and like I showed with the Aries Cyclops earlier, I think this is a cool rarity that you can definitely explore in Borderlands 1 Remastered, provided you import an old edited save. Number 8. The modded Double Anarchy SMG. So, the Double Anarchy has always been a favorite amongst Borderlands 1 fans, and as you might expect, there are a few mods that bolster the Anarchy's projectile count. In the case of this one here, it achieves a 6 times projectile multiplier thanks to the Shredder titles, which are normally reserved for shotguns but increase the projectile count when applied to pretty much any weapon. For those familiar with the regular Anarchy's mechanics, the Anarchy title does something similar, and the result is ultimately an SMG that fires 6 projectiles per shot at the cost of like 2 bullets. It's also got decent stats in other areas as well. Before the multiplier, and when it comes to your base damage, this Anarchy averages around 250 plus, where the non-modded variants can be around the high 100s to the lower 200s. Plus, the modded Anarchy also has improved accuracy as well, clocking in at about 45 accuracy, where a normal Anarchy might be around the 30s. It's not a huge upgrade, but it's definitely an improvement to a fan-favorite SMG, and should prove to be a nice gun to play around with. If you want one, be sure to copy the code I'm showing here on screen so you can construct your own version. Number 7. The 5X Iridium Blaster. I've always found that Iridium weapons in Borderlands 1 were pretty lacking. While the infinite ammo and recharging mechanics are cool, a lot of these weapons typically lack the damage potential of many other weapons that are available. Fortunately, you can find some pretty awesome modded ones out there. In the case of this one that I'm using in particular, you're getting a nice projectile multiplier here thanks to the double shredder titles. Because of these 2 shredder titles appearing on this weapon, you're getting 4 projectiles added at a better accuracy value than you would if you had double Anarchy titles, which is another version of this modded item that has about 37 accuracy as opposed to this version's 80+ accuracy. So if you're looking for a more accurate version of a modded Iridium Blaster, I would recommend going with ones that have a shredder title as opposed to an Anarchy title. Otherwise, there's not really a whole lot else to say about this particular weapon. If you want one, you can use the code I'm displaying on screen to construct your own. Number 6. The 5X Iridium Firebomb. As a trend that I'm sure you may be picking up on at this point, this is essentially a modded firebomb that's been given a 5x projectile multiplier thanks to Anarchy titles. Unlike the Iridium Blaster I just discussed, I don't think the lower accuracy really hurts the firebomb, since you're now able to shoot 5 firebomb projectiles that yield this large area of effect blast that can just be relentlessly sprayed to deal damage and apply burn effects. Like the regular firebomb, direct aiming also works, but given the sheer amount of projectiles and the fact that each projectile spawns an additional 3 child projectiles, I think you'll find this weapon ends up being very effective as well as very fun to use. At the very least, I'd say you can make a pretty nice spectacle with this thing, especially on consecutive shots, since you can usually fill an area with a bunch of fire explosions. If that sounds interesting to you and you also don't want to worry about ammo, then I think you're definitely going to like this thing. If you want one, here's the code so you can construct your own. Number 5. The modded Chimera. So I've always thought that the Chimera was a pretty cool gun in Borderlands 1, and there's no arguing that it's really the first multi-elemental weapon we encountered in the entire Borderlands series. Fortunately, it seems like there were some modders that really liked the Chimera and decided to make some modifications to it to greatly improve the weapon's attributes. The most obvious change that's been made here is the addition of the shredder titles to help boost the projectile count and give the Chimera more masher-like qualities. However, the less obvious change that I can't really explain is what seems to be a noticeably higher elemental proc chance. This could come down to the addition of more projectiles or something else, but what I think we can say is that this much higher proc chance seems to make the weapon hit a lot harder. In practice, I've found that when you're going up against mobs that you're usually either getting a 1 or 2 shot kill with this thing, and I would say that's pretty good. Ultimately, if you're looking for a powerful modded revolver to use, I think you'll be pretty happy with this thing. It's got fairly high base damage, a projectile multiplier, and while it's not in a consistent element, you may find that that doesn't really matter all that much. If you want one, here's the code. Number 4. The VLK-7 Grenade Launcher. Some of you may not know this, but Borderlands 1 actually has a decent amount of cut content, with one of those things being grenade launchers. Fortunately, you can save edit some of these to your character provided you know the proper codes, and as it pertains to this video, there are actually modded versions of these kinds of grenade launchers, hence the Atlas VLK-7 Grenade Launcher that I am showcasing here. This one's kind of interesting as it contains the Leviathan barrel, the mat accessory for grenade launchers, which improves your base damage by 50%, and of course it contains the prevalent shredder title that many modded weapons have, which increases your projectile count by 2. The end result is a launcher that possesses an astounding amount of base damage, which can definitely hurt the player provided they're too close to the blast when it eventually goes off. However, and once you get more used to the grenade launcher's odd projectile arc, I think you'll find this thing can be a ton of fun to play with. It's a shame these never made it into the official game, but what is nice is that a lot of the code for them is still present within Borderlands 1 Remastered. So be sure to use the code I'm showing here on your OG Borderlands 1 save, and then import that into Borderlands 1 Remastered if you want to play around with this thing. Number 3. The Rage Shredder. I've got to admit that this particular pistol really surprised me. Though it appears to be a fairly standard modded pistol with a Shredder title and a Rage title, which improves the fire rate, recoil control, and allows burst, this pistol also has a number of unique weapon parts that have been attached to it. Specifically, you're getting the protector body, which allows for ammo regen, the Vladof Rebel magazine, which provides a slight fire rate and damage boost, the Hyperion Invader's scope, which allows you to fully exhaust the magazine in a single burst while aiming down the sight, and finally the Firehawk accessory, which adds the fire element while also increasing damage rather than reducing it. In essence, you're getting a lot of great weapon parts on this pistol, and it ends up making it really powerful. Plus, you'd think the fire element would make it weaker against certain enemy types, but I guess due to how we're using the Firehawk accessory here, which is already pretty powerful, it just elevates the rest of the gun to really high levels, and makes it so it even works fairly well against Iridians. Assuming you get your hands on it, I think you'll agree that this is a pretty great modded pistol in Borderlands Remastered. If you want it, be sure to load this code onto your OG Borderlands 1 character and import it into the remaster. Number 2. The 3X Penetrator Sniper. Like a number of other Shredder variants that we've discussed thus far, the increased projectile multiplier here comes from the Shredder title. To be honest, I'm not sure what the twisted prefix is for, since prefixes usually indicate a weapon's properties, but I think what I can say is that it definitely makes this sniper have a much better name than, say, Shredder Shredder or something similar. As for the gun itself, this is basically a modded version of the penetrator and is very powerful. The high rate of fire and high crit damage this sniper rifle is capable of should allow you to easily achieve really high DPS. The addition of the projectile multiplier makes the weapon far stronger, and maybe it's just me, but I think it also makes hip firing a bit easier as well, as the additional projectiles seem to have a high likelihood of hitting your target. I think you'll find this thing is really fun to use, and it might remind you of the Lyuda, so it might be a good thing to import into the remastered version of this game. And here's the code if you'd like to construct your own. And for our final entry, Number 1, the 5X Ajax Ogre. So the Ajax Ogre has always been a popular top-tier weapon in Borderlands 1, and as you might guess, there is a modded version that's pretty ridiculous as it comes with a 5x projectile multiplier. So not only are you getting the traditional Ajax Ogre hybrid as a base, but you're getting this thing with 5 projectiles because of these Shredder shotgun titles that have been applied to it. You do get some accuracy loss as a result of this, however, many of the Ajax Ogre's traits, like its superior recoil reduction, accuracy control, and high fire rate, are largely retained. As for what's gained, you're basically getting a 400% damage increase on a rifle that was already the best combat rifle in the game. So I'd say that whatever accuracy you're losing here isn't really that big of a deal in the grander scheme of things. In the end though, and like many other Shredder weapons I've already covered, I think you'll find this thing is insanely powerful, and it's cool to see this be applied to what is such a fantastic combat rifle already. If you want this thing, be sure to construct one using the code that I'm displaying in video. Alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, definitely be sure to leave a like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload my next Borderlands video, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.